Chapter 1. Red dust alarms blared through the corridors of the Mars terraforming base, jolting Dr. Zara Khoury from her fitful slumber. She leaped out of bed, heart pounding, and grabbed her comm device. "What's happening?" she demanded, her voice hoarse. "Atmospheric processor malfunction," the base AI responded, its synthetic voice eerily calm amidst the chaos. "Oxygen levels critical. All personnel to emergency stations." Zara cursed under her breath as she hastily donned her protective suit. She had known the risks when she signed up for the Mars colonization project, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment. As lead engineer, the fate of the entire settlement rested on her shoulders. She raced through the dimly lit hallways, dodging panicked colonists and flashing emergency lights. The base, once a beacon of hope for humanity's future, now felt like a claustrophobic tomb. In the command center, Zara found her team already gathered around the main display, their faces etched with worry. "Status report," she barked, taking her place at the head of the table. "The dust storm damaged the atmospheric processors," explained Dr. Mikhail Petrov, his brow furrowed. "We're losing oxygen faster than we can replenish it. If we don't fix this soon—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew the stakes. Zara studied the readouts, her mind racing. "We need to send a team out to assess the damage and make repairs." "In this storm?" Dr. Jenna Nakamura, the base's medical officer, shook her head. "It's too dangerous. The winds are over 100 kilometers per hour, and visibility is nearly zero." "We don't have a choice," Zara countered, her jaw set. "If we don't act now, we'll all suffocate." Silence fell over the room as the gravity of their situation sank in. They were alone on an alien world, millions of kilometers from Earth, facing an enemy they couldn't even see. But Zara refused to give up. She had fought too hard to let this mission fail. "Mikhail, Jenna, you're with me," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her gut. "We'll take the rover to the atmospheric processor array and see what we can do. The rest of you, keep the base running and monitor our progress." As they headed for the airlock, suits sealed and helmets in place, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The red dust of Mars swirled around them, a silent reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. But she was determined to face them head-on, for the sake of her team and the future of humanity on this unforgiving world. Chapter 2. Into the Storm. The airlock hissed open, revealing the desolate Martian landscape. Zara, Mikhail, and Jenna stepped out into the raging dust storm, their suit lights barely penetrating the swirling red haze. The wind buffeted them from all sides, threatening to knock them off their feet. "Stay close and watch your footing," Zara shouted over the comm, her voice barely audible above the howling storm. "We need to reach the rover and get to the atmospheric processor array as quickly as possible." They trudged forward, each step a battle against the unrelenting wind. The dust obscured their vision, making it nearly impossible to navigate. Zara relied on her suit's heads-up display, following the beacon that marked the rover's location. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the vehicle bay. Zara climbed into the driver's seat, while Mikhail and Jenna strapped themselves in beside her. She fired up the engine, and the rover roared to life, its powerful lights cutting through the murky storm. "Atmospheric processor array is 3 kilometers northeast of the base," Mikhail said, studying the map on his display. "But with these conditions, it might as well be on the other side of the planet." Zara gripped the steering wheel tighter, her determination unwavering. "We'll make it. We have to." As they set out into the storm, the rover rocked and shuddered, battered by the relentless wind. The terrain was treacherous, littered with jagged rocks and deep crevasses. Zara navigated carefully, her eyes glued to the sensors, trusting in the vehicle's rugged design. Suddenly, a warning light flashed on the dashboard. "We've got a problem," Jenna said, her voice tense. "The storm's interference is messing with our navigation systems. We're flying blind out here." Zara's heart raced, but she refused to let fear take hold. "We'll have to rely on dead reckoning," she said, her mind already calculating their course. "Mikhail, keep an eye on our heading. Jenna, monitor the rover's systems and let me know if anything else goes wrong." They pressed on, the rover crawling forward at an agonizing pace. Time seemed to stretch into an endless void, punctuated only by the relentless howl of the wind and the crackle of static over the comm. Just as Zara was beginning to wonder if they'd ever reach their destination, a looming shape materialized out of the swirling dust. The atmospheric processor array, its towering spires and sprawling pipes barely visible in the gloom. "We made it," Mikhail breathed, relief evident in his voice. But as they drew closer, Zara's heart sank. The array was in worse shape than she had feared, its vital components battered and broken by the storm. Sparks flew from ruptured conduits, and jagged holes gaped in the structure's walls. "This is bad," Jenna whispered, her eyes wide behind her helmet visor. "How are we ever going to fix this?" Zara took a deep breath, pushing down the rising tide of panic. They had come too far to give up now. "We'll take it one step at a time," she said, her voice steady. "First, we assess the damage. Then we come up with a plan. We're not leaving until this array is operational again." As they stepped out of the rover and approached the battered structure, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that their struggle was only beginning. The shadows of Mars loomed over them, a silent reminder of the challenges they would face in their fight for survival on this unforgiving world. Chapter 3. Shadows of the Past. The shattered atmospheric processor array loomed before them, a twisted relic of humanity's ambition. Zara, Mikhail, and Jenna approached cautiously, their suit lights casting eerie shadows across the ruined structure. "Let's split up and assess the damage," Zara said, her voice steady despite the unease churning in her gut. "Mikhail, take the north section. Jenna, you've got the south. I'll tackle the central control hub." They nodded, their faces grim behind their visors. As they parted ways, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The Martian landscape seemed to press in around her, an alien presence that resented their intrusion. She made her way to the central control hub, stepping over debris and shattered glass. The once pristine consoles were dark, their screens cracked and lifeless. Zara removed a panel, exposing a tangle of wires and circuit boards. As she worked to bypass the damaged components, a flicker of movement caught her eye. She spun around, her heart pounding, but there was nothing there, just the swirling dust and the echoes of the storm. "Zara, you there?" Mikhail's voice crackled over the comm, startling her. "Yeah, I'm here," she replied, shaking off the eerie sensation. "What have you got?" "I found something strange," Mikhail said, hesitation in his voice. "There are markings on the walls, like someone was trying to scratch out a message." A chill ran down Zara's spine. "What does it say?" "I can't make out all of it, but it looks like they are watching, and the red sands hide their secrets." Zara's mind raced, trying to make sense of the cryptic words. "Could be someone's idea of a prank," she said, but the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. "I don't think so," Jenna chimed in, her voice tight with tension. "I found something too. It's a piece of an old spacesuit, and there's blood on it." Silence hung heavy over the comm, broken only by the hiss of static. Zara's throat constricted, a sense of dread settling in her chest. "We need to focus on the repairs," she said, forcing herself to stay calm. "Whatever happened here, it's in the past. We have a job to do." But as she turned back to the console, a glint of metal caught her eye. She reached out, her fingers closing around a small rectangular object. It was a data drive, its surface scratched and pitted by the Martian sand. Zara's breath caught in her throat. This could be the clue they needed to unravel the mystery of the atmospheric processor's failure. But as she stared at the drive, a flicker of unease passed through her. What secrets did it hold? And were they ready to face the truth? She tucked the drive into her suit's pocket, a heavy weight against her chest. They had come to Mars to build a new future for humanity. But now it seemed that the red planet held shadows of its own, whispers of a past that refused to stay buried. As Zara resumed her work, the weight of the data drive and the cryptic messages hung over her like a shroud. The shadows of Mars grew longer, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of something far more profound and terrifying than a simple terraforming mission gone wrong. Chapter 4. Whispers in the Data. Zara's heart raced as she turned the scratched data drive over in her hands. The weight of it seemed to grow with each passing moment, a physical manifestation of the secrets it might contain. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see a ghostly figure lurking in the shadows of the ruined array. "I found something too," she said over the comm, her voice steady despite the tremor in her fingers. A data drive. It looks like it's been through hell, but it might hold some answers. Bring it back to the command center, Mikhail replied, his tone grim. We need to see what's on it. Zara nodded, even though her teammates couldn't see her. Agreed. Let's finish up here and head back. I've got a feeling we're not going to like what we find. As they worked, the wind howled through the shattered array, carrying with it the whispers of the past. Zara couldn't shake the sense that they were being watched, that the very planet itself was aware of their presence. The journey back to the command center was a blur of swirling dust and unspoken fears. Zara clutched the data drive tightly, as if it were a lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. Once inside, they gathered around the main console, their faces drawn and haggard in the harsh light. Zara slotted the data drive into the port, her fingers trembling slightly. The screen flickered to life, a cascade of data scrolling across its surface. At first, it seemed to be nothing more than a jumble of numbers and symbols, but as Zara studied it more closely, a pattern began to emerge. It's a log, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. From the original terraforming team. Mikhail leaned in, his eyes narrowing. What does it say? Zara scrolled through the entries, her heart sinking with each passing second. They encountered something they couldn't explain. It started with strange readings from the atmospheric processors, fluctuations that didn't make sense. Jenna's breath hitched. Just like what we're seeing now. Zara nodded, a knot forming in her stomach. It gets worse. They started experiencing hallucinations, hearing voices in the wind. Some of them claimed to see figures in the shadows, watching them. The markings on the walls, Mikhail murmured, his face pale. The blood on the suit. They were trying to warn us, Zara said, her voice cracking. But we didn't listen. We thought we could tame this planet, make it our own, but we were wrong. The room fell silent, the weight of the revelation hanging heavy in the air. Zara stared at the screen, the words blurring before her eyes. There's more, she said, her voice barely audible. The last entry, it says, they are here. The red sands have awakened. God help us all. A chill ran through the room, a palpable sense of dread settling over them, like a shroud. Zara looked up, meeting the haunted gazes of her teammates. We have to fix the atmospheric processors, she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. But we also have to find out what happened to the original team. We can't let their sacrifice be in vain. Mikhail and Jenna nodded, their faces set with grim determination. They knew that the shadows of Mars held secrets, whispers of a past that threatened to consume them all. As they prepared to venture back out into the Martian wilderness, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of something far greater and more terrifying than they had ever imagined. The red sands had awakened, and they would stop at nothing to claim what was theirs. Chapter 5. Echoes of the Past. Zara's mind raced as she tried to process the implications of the data drive's contents. The original terraforming team had encountered something sinister, something that had driven them to the brink of madness. And now, it seemed that history was repeating itself. We need to go back out there, Zara said, her voice filled with determination. We have to find out what happened to them and how it's connected to our current crisis. Mikhail nodded, his jaw set. I agree, but we need to be careful. Whatever they encountered out there, it's clear that it's not something to be taken lightly. Jenna shuddered, her eyes wide with fear. I don't like this. What if we end up like them, lost, hallucinating, consumed by whatever is out there? Zara placed a reassuring hand on Jenna's shoulder. We won't. We have each other, and we have the knowledge they left behind. We'll face this together, and we'll find a way to survive. As they prepared to venture back out into the Martian landscape, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The shadows seemed to flicker and dance, as if hiding secrets just beyond the reach of their flashlights. The journey to the atmospheric processor array was a tense one, filled with unspoken fears and the constant sense of an unseen presence. The wind whispered through the canyons, carrying with it the echoes of the past. When they arrived at the array, Zara's heart sank. The damage was even more extensive than they had initially thought, and the eerie markings on the walls seemed to have multiplied in their absence. Look at this, Mikhail called out, his voice echoing through the chamber. He was kneeling beside a shattered control panel, his eyes fixed on a small, glinting object. Zara and Jenna rushed over, their breath catching in their throats as they saw what Mikhail had found. It was a locket, tarnished and dented, with a single word etched into its surface: remember. With trembling fingers, Zara opened the locket, revealing a small photograph inside. It depicted a group of people, their faces worn and haggard, standing in front of the very array they now found themselves in. "It's them," Jenna whispered, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. "The original terraforming team." Zara nodded, a lump forming in her throat. They knew they might not make it out alive. This was their way of ensuring that their story would be told. As they stood there, staring at the faces of the long-dead pioneers, a sudden gust of wind tore through the array, carrying with it a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You cannot escape the shadows," it whispered, its tone filled with malice. "The red sands will claim you, just as they claimed us." Zara's heart raced, her eyes darting around the chamber in search of the source of the voice. But there was nothing, only the swirling dust and the echoes of the past. "We need to keep moving," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "We have to find a way to fix the array, and then we need to get the hell out of here." As they set to work, the shadows seemed to close in around them, the whispers growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time, that the red sands of Mars were awakening, and that they would stop at nothing to claim their souls. Chapter 6: The Awakening. The eerie whispers echoed through the atmospheric processor array, sending chills down Zara's spine. The shadows danced along the walls, their movements becoming more frenzied with each passing moment. Mikhail and Jenna worked frantically to repair the damage, their hands shaking as they tried to ignore the growing sense of dread that permeated the air. Zara's mind raced as she tried to make sense of the clues they had uncovered. The original terraforming team had faced something beyond their understanding, something that had driven them to the brink of insanity. And now, it seemed that the same force was reaching out to them, threatening to consume their very souls. As she worked, Zara's eyes were drawn to the strange markings on the walls. They seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy, their patterns shifting and changing before her very eyes. She blinked, trying to clear her vision, but the markings only grew more vivid, more insistent. "Zara!" Jenna's voice cut through the eerie silence, snapping Zara back to reality. "I think I found something." Zara rushed over to where Jenna was crouched, her heart pounding in her chest. Jenna held up a small, ancient-looking device, its surface covered in intricate symbols and glyphs. "What is it?" Zara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jenna shook her head, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. "I don't know, but it seems to be reacting to the markings on the walls. It's like it's communicating with them somehow." Mikhail joined them, his face etched with concern. "We need to be careful. We don't know what this thing is capable of." Zara nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "We need to finish the repairs and get back to the colony. We can study this device there, try to figure out what it is and how it's connected to all of this." As they worked, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The shadows seemed to take on a life of their own, swirling and writhing around them like a living entity. Zara felt a deep, primal fear rising within her, a fear that threatened to overwhelm her very being. And then, suddenly, the device in Jenna's hand began to glow, its symbols pulsing with an otherworldly light. The markings on the walls responded in kind, their patterns shifting and changing until they formed a single, terrifying image. A great, shadowy figure, its eyes burning with a malevolent intelligence. "You cannot escape your fate," the figure whispered, its voice filling the chamber with a deafening roar. "The red sands have awakened, and they will claim what is rightfully theirs." Zara felt a scream rising in her throat, but it was drowned out by the howling of the wind and the pounding of her own heart. She grabbed Mikhail and Jenna, pulling them towards the exit, desperate to escape the nightmare that had engulfed them. But as they ran, the shadows pursued them, their tendrils reaching out to ensnare them, to drag them back into the depths of the array. Zara felt her strength failing, her mind beginning to fray under the onslaught of the whispering voices and the pulsating darkness. And then, just as all seemed lost, they burst out into the Martian landscape, the cold, thin air filling their lungs with a desperate gasp. They collapsed onto the red sand, their bodies shaking with exhaustion and terror. But even as they lay there, gasping for breath, Zara knew that their ordeal was far from over. The red sands had awakened, and the shadows of Mars would not rest until they had claimed what they believed was rightfully theirs. The fight for survival had only just begun, and Zara knew that they would need every ounce of strength and courage they possessed to make it through the trials that lay ahead. Chapter 7. The Red Sands Whisper. Zara, Mikhail, and Jenna stumbled back into the colony, their minds reeling from the terrifying encounter at the atmospheric processor array. The ancient device, now securely in Zara's possession, seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, as if it were a living thing. As they made their way through the winding corridors of the habitat, the whispers followed them, echoing in their minds like a haunting melody. The shadows danced along the walls, their movements growing more frenzied with each passing moment. "We need to analyze this device," Zara said, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. "It might hold the key to understanding what's happening here." Mikhail nodded, his eyes darting nervously around the room. "I'll set up the lab. We need to work quickly. I don't know how much time we have before." He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. They all knew what he meant. The red sands were awakening, and the malevolent presence that had haunted the original terraforming team was now turning its attention to them. As they worked, the device began to glow once more, its symbols pulsing with an otherworldly light. Zara felt a sudden surge of energy coursing through her body, as if the device were connecting with her on a deep primal level. And then, the whispers intensified, their words becoming clear and unmistakable. "The red sands claim what is theirs," they hissed, their voices filled with a dark, ancient power. "You cannot escape your fate." Zara's mind raced as she tried to make sense of the message. What did the red sands want? And why had they chosen to communicate through this ancient device? As if in answer to her unspoken questions, the device began to project a series of images onto the walls of the lab. Zara, Mikhail, and Jenna watched in horror as they saw visions of the original terraforming team, their faces contorted in agony as they were consumed by the red sands. And then the final image appeared, a great shadowy figure, its eyes burning with a malevolent intelligence. "You are the key," it whispered, its voice filling the room with a deafening roar. "Embrace your destiny, and the red sands will spare your colony." Zara felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the implications of the message. The red sands were not just a force of nature, but a sentient being, one that had chosen her for a terrible purpose. She looked at Mikhail and Jenna, their faces etched with fear and confusion. "We have to find a way to stop this," she said, her voice filled with a grim determination. "We can't let the red sands win." But even as she spoke the words, Zara knew that their fight was far from over. The red sands had awakened, and they would not rest until they had claimed what they believed was rightfully theirs. As the whispers grew louder and the shadows danced ever more frantically, Zara steeled herself for the battles to come. She knew that she would need every ounce of strength and courage she possessed to unravel the mysteries of the ancient device and find a way to stop the red sands before it was too late. The fate of the colony, and perhaps all of humanity, rested on their shoulders. And as the red sands whispered their dark promises, Zara knew that failure was not an option. Chapter 8. The Awakening. As the weight of their discovery settled upon them, Zara, Mikhail, and Jenna knew they had to act fast. The colony's survival depended on their ability to unravel the secrets of the ancient device and find a way to stop the red sands. Zara clutched the device tightly, feeling its energy pulsing through her like a second heartbeat. She couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than just a relic of a long-forgotten past. It was a key to their future. "We need to talk to Dr. Xander," Zara said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "If anyone can help us make sense of this, it's him." Mikhail and Jenna nodded in agreement, and together they made their way to Dr. Xander's quarters. The elderly scientist had been with the colony since its inception, and his knowledge of Mars history was unparalleled. As they entered his dimly lit room, Dr. Xander looked up from his desk, his eyes widening as he saw the device in Zara's hands. "Where did you find that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zara explained their discovery at the atmospheric processor array and the visions the device had shown them. Dr. Xander listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I've heard whispers of this device," he said, his voice trembling with a mix of awe and fear. "It's said to be a conduit, a bridge between our world and the realm of the Red Sands." He paused, his eyes fixated on the device. "If the Red Sands have chosen you, Zara, then you must have a connection to them, a power that they seek to exploit." Zara felt a chill run down her spine at the thought. She had always felt a strange pull towards Mars, a longing that she couldn't quite explain. Could it be that the Red Sands had been calling to her all along? As if in response to her thoughts, the device began to glow once more, its symbols pulsing with an otherworldly light. Zara gasped as a wave of energy surged through her, and suddenly, she found herself standing in a vast red desert, the sky above her a deep, haunting crimson. Before her stood the shadowy figure from her visions, its eyes burning with an ancient, malevolent power. "You cannot deny your destiny," it whispered, its voice echoing through the desolate landscape. "The Red Sands will have what they desire, and you will be the instrument of their will." Zara shook her head, trying to clear the vision from her mind. She looked at Dr. Xander, Mikhail, and Jenna, their faces etched with concern. "I saw it again," she said, her voice trembling. "The figure from my visions. It said that I'm the instrument of the Red Sands' will." Dr. Xander nodded solemnly. "The Red Sands are an ancient, powerful force," he said. "They have been waiting for centuries, perhaps even millennia, for someone like you, Zara. Someone with the power to bridge our worlds and bring about their awakening." Zara felt a wave of fear wash over her, but she pushed it aside. She knew that she couldn't let the Red Sands win, no matter the cost. "We have to find a way to stop this," she said, her voice filled with determination. "We can't let the Red Sands claim our colony, our home." As the whispers grew louder and the shadows danced ever more frantically, Zara and her team set to work, poring over ancient texts and analyzing the device for any clues that might lead them to a solution. The fate of the colony hung in the balance, and Zara knew that she would stop at nothing to protect her people, even if it meant facing the Red Sands and their dark, ancient power head-on. Chapter 9. The Gathering Storm. As Zara, Mikhail, and Jenna delved deeper into the mysteries surrounding the ancient device in the Red Sands, a sense of unease settled over the colony. Whispers of strange occurrences and unexplained phenomena began to circulate, and the shadows seemed to grow longer and more menacing with each passing day. Zara spent every waking moment studying the device, trying to decipher its cryptic symbols and unravel the secrets of her connection to the Red Sands. She could feel the power within her growing stronger, a constant hum that thrummed through her veins and set her nerves on edge. "I don't understand," she confessed to Mikhail one evening, frustration evident in her voice. "Why me? Why have the Red Sands chosen me?" Mikhail placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Perhaps it's because you've always had a special connection to Mars," he suggested. "Even back on Earth, you were drawn to this place, to its mysteries and its secrets." Zara nodded, recalling the countless hours she had spent studying the red planet, dreaming of the day she would set foot on its surface. Now, those dreams had taken on a darker, more ominous tone. As the team continued their research, they made a startling discovery. The device was not just a conduit between worlds. It was a key to unlocking a gateway, a portal that would allow the Red Sands to manifest in their world. "We can't let that happen," Jenna declared, her eyes wide with fear. "If the Red Sands cross over, they'll consume everything in their path, our colony, our people, everything we've worked so hard to build." Zara knew that Jenna was right. They had to find a way to stop the Red Sands, to seal the gateway before it was too late. But as they worked tirelessly to find a solution, the whispers grew louder, and the shadows began to take on a life of their own. Strange figures appeared in the corners of their vision, and eerie voices echoed through the empty corridors of the colony. And then, one night, as Zara lay sleeping, the device began to glow with an intense, pulsing light. She awoke with a start. her heart racing as she realized that the ancient symbols were moving, rearranging themselves into a new, terrifying pattern. Before her eyes, a portal began to form, a swirling vortex of red and black that seemed to pull at her very soul. And from within the depths of the portal, a figure emerged, a being of pure shadow and malevolence. "The time has come," it whispered, its voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "The Red Sands will have their due, and you, Zara Khoury, will be the one to deliver it to them." Zara scrambled to her feet, her mind racing as she tried to comprehend the horror before her. She knew that she had to act fast, to find a way to close the portal before it was too late. But as she stood there, frozen in fear, she could feel the power of the Red Sands surging through her, a dark and ancient force that threatened to consume her very being. The gathering storm had arrived, and Zara knew that she was the only one who could stop it. But at what cost? And would she be strong enough to face the darkness that lurked within her own soul? With a deep breath, Zara steeled herself for the battle to come, knowing that the fate of the colony, and perhaps all of humanity, rested on her shoulders. Chapter 10. The Darkest Hour. Zara stood before the swirling portal, her heart pounding in her chest as she faced the shadowy figure that had emerged from its depths. The being's words echoed in her mind, a chilling reminder of the fate that awaited her and the colony if she failed. "I won't let you win," she declared, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. "I'll find a way to stop you, to seal this gateway and protect my people." The figure laughed, a sound that sent shivers down Zara's spine. "You cannot stop what has already begun," it taunted. "The Red Sands have chosen you, and you will fulfill your destiny whether you wish it or not." Zara shook her head, refusing to accept the being's words. She reached out with her mind, tapping into the power that thrummed through her veins, and focused all of her energy on the portal. But the Red Sands were strong, and they pushed back against her with a force that nearly knocked her off her feet. Zara gritted her teeth and redoubled her efforts, pouring every ounce of her strength into the battle. Around her, the colony began to tremble and shake, as if the very foundations of the planet were shifting beneath their feet. The shadows grew longer and more menacing, and the whispers of the Red Sands grew louder, filling the air with their eerie, otherworldly voices. Mikhail and Jenna rushed to Zara's side, their faces etched with worry and fear. "What's happening?" Jenna cried, her eyes wide with terror. "The Red Sands are trying to break through," Zara gasped, her brow furrowed with concentration. "I'm doing everything I can to hold them back, but I don't know how long I can last." Mikhail placed a hand on Zara's shoulder, his touch a comforting presence amidst the chaos. "We're with you, Zara," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "We'll find a way to stop this, together." As the trio stood united against the gathering darkness, the colony around them began to crumble and fall. Buildings toppled and shattered, and the once thriving gardens withered and died, as if drained of all life and vitality. And through it all, the Red Sands continued to pour through the portal, a relentless tide of crimson that threatened to engulf everything in its path. Zara could feel her strength waning, her body and mind pushed to their limits by the sheer magnitude of the forces arrayed against her. But she refused to give up, refused to let the Red Sands claim her and the colony she had worked so hard to build. With a final, desperate surge of power, Zara focused all of her energy on the portal, pouring every last ounce of her will into sealing the gateway once and for all. For a moment, it seemed as if she had succeeded. The portal began to flicker and fade, and the shadows retreated, as if pushed back by an invisible force. But then, just as victory seemed within reach, a deafening crack split the air, and the portal shattered, exploding outward in a blinding flash of crimson light. Zara was thrown backwards, her body slamming into the hard, unforgiving ground. She lay there, dazed and disoriented, as the world around her spun and twisted, the very fabric of reality unraveling before her eyes. And as she struggled to rise, to face the horror that had been unleashed upon the colony, she knew that the darkest hour had come, and that the fate of all she held dear hung in the balance. Chapter 11. The Unraveling. Zara staggered to her feet, her vision blurred, and her head throbbing from the impact. The once thriving colony lay in ruins around her, the buildings reduced to piles of rubble, and the gardens now nothing more than barren wastelands. The air was thick with the coppery scent of the red sands, and the whispers of the otherworldly voices had grown to a deafening roar. "Mikhail, Jenna!" Zara called out, her voice hoarse and desperate, but there was no response, only the eerie silence that had fallen over the shattered remains of the settlement. As Zara stumbled through the wreckage, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The shadows seemed to move and twist of their own accord, and the red sands swirled and danced in impossible patterns, as if guided by an unseen hand. And then she saw them. The colonists, the people she had sworn to protect, lay scattered across the ground, their bodies twisted and contorted in ways that defied explanation. Their eyes stared blankly into the crimson-tinged sky, and their skin was mottled and gray, as if all the life had been drained from them. Zara's heart sank as she realized the true extent of the horror that had been unleashed. The red sands had claimed them all, leaving nothing but empty shells in their wake. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm her, Zara knew that she couldn't give up. She had to find Mikhail and Jenna, had to make sure they were safe. And then, somehow, she had to find a way to stop the red sands, to seal the portal and save what was left of the colony. With renewed determination, Zara pressed on, her eyes scanning the ruins for any sign of her friends. But as she searched, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that something dark and sinister was lurking just out of sight. And then she heard it. A voice, low and menacing, echoing through the shattered remains of the colony. "You cannot escape your fate, Zara," it whispered, the words seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "The red sands have chosen you, and you will fulfill your destiny." Zara spun around, her heart pounding in her chest as she searched for the source of the voice. But there was nothing there, only the swirling red sands and the twisted shadows that danced at the edges of her vision. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw a flicker of movement. A figure, cloaked in shadow, darting through the ruins. "Mikhail!" Zara cried out, relief flooding through her as she recognized the familiar silhouette. But as she ran towards him, something made her hesitate. There was something off about the way he moved, something unnatural and wrong. As Zara drew closer, Mikhail turned to face her, and she gasped in horror at what she saw. His eyes, once warm and kind, were now cold and lifeless, and his skin was mottled and gray, just like the other colonists. "No," Zara whispered, her voice trembling with fear and disbelief. "Not you too." But even as she spoke, Mikhail lunged towards her, his movements jerky and uncoordinated, like a puppet on a string. Zara stumbled backwards, her mind reeling as she tried to make sense of what was happening, and then, from behind her, she heard a scream. "Jenna!" Zara spun around, her heart in her throat as she saw her friend stumbling towards her, her eyes wide with terror. But even as Zara reached out to her, she saw the shadows gathering around Jenna, saw the red sands swirling and dancing in impossible patterns. And then Jenna was gone, swallowed up by the crimson tide, her scream cut off abruptly as the sands claimed her. Zara fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face as the full weight of the horror crashed down upon her. She had failed them all, had let the red sands claim everyone she held dear. But even as despair threatened to crush her, Zara knew that she couldn't give up. She was the only one left, the only one who could stop the red sands and seal the portal once and for all. With a final, desperate surge of strength, Zara pushed herself to her feet, her eyes blazing with determination. She would not let the red sands win, would not let the sacrifices of her friends be in vain. And so, with nothing left to lose, Zara turned to face the swirling portal, ready to make her final stand against the shadows of Mars. Chapter 12. The Final Stand. Zara stood alone amidst the ruins of the colony, the weight of her responsibility pressing down upon her like a physical force. The red sands swirled around her, their whispers growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. She could feel their hunger, their desire to claim her as they had claimed everyone else. But Zara would not let them win. She had lost too much, had seen too much horror and devastation to give up now. She owed it to Mikhail, to Jenna, to all the colonists who had fallen victim to the red sands. With a deep breath, Zara stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the shimmering portal that had unleashed this nightmare upon them all. She could feel the power emanating from it, a dark and twisted energy that seemed to pulse in time with her own heartbeat. As she drew closer, the shadows began to coalesce around her, taking on forms that were both familiar and terrifyingly alien. She saw Mikhail and Jenna, their faces contorted in agony as the red sands consumed them from within. She saw the other colonists, their bodies twisted and broken, their eyes staring blankly into the void. But Zara pushed on, her determination growing with each step. She knew that she was the only one who could stop this, the only one who could seal the portal and banish the red sands back to the depths from which they had come. And then, as she reached the edge of the portal, she heard it again, the voice, low and menacing, echoing through the ruins. "You cannot win, Zara," it whispered, the words seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You are but a pawn in a game that has been played out across the ages. The red sands will claim you, as they have claimed all who came before." But Zara would not be swayed. She had come too far, had lost too much to turn back now. With a final, defiant cry, she reached out and plunged her hand into the swirling vortex of the portal. Pain, unlike anything she had ever known, coursed through her body, and she could feel the red sands tearing at her flesh, trying to claim her as their own. But Zara held fast, pouring every ounce of her strength and determination into the task at hand. She could feel the portal beginning to waver, could sense the red sands losing their grip on this world. And then, with a blinding flash of light, it was over. The portal collapsed in on itself, the red sands vanishing back into the void from whence they had come. Zara collapsed to the ground, her body battered and broken, but her spirit unbroken. As she lay there, staring up at the now clear Martian sky, Zara knew that she had succeeded. She had sealed the portal, had stopped the red sands from claiming any more lives. But the cost had been high. The colony lay in ruins around her, and everyone she had ever known and loved was gone, claimed by the very thing she had fought so hard to stop. And yet, even in the face of such overwhelming loss, Zara could not help but feel a sense of hope. She had proven that humanity could overcome even the greatest of challenges, that they could stand firm in the face of an implacable enemy and emerge victorious. As she closed her eyes, ready to embrace whatever fate awaited her, Zara knew that her story would not be forgotten. She had fought the shadows of Mars and won, had ensured that the sacrifices of her friends and loved ones had not been in vain. And though the road ahead would be long and hard, Zara knew that humanity would endure. They would rebuild, would start anew, and would carry on the legacy of all those who had fallen. For in the end, that was what it meant to be human. To stand firm in the face of adversity, to fight for what was right, and to never, ever give up. And as the sun began to rise over the horizon, casting its warm golden light across the ruined landscape of the colony, Zara knew that somehow everything would be all right.